Okay.
ChatGPT-5 has officially launched. I was watching part of the presentation of Sam Altman, who was talking about how the emphasis is on businesses and developers and all that, and AI agents coming up, and AI autonomous agents in this case. That you can kind of program them to do all the work on their own and develop entire apps or whatnot. Do all these kind of tasks, and
Right.
you know that's part of the presentation that Sam Altman gave. But what I found very interesting, well, I don't know if it's interesting, but I saw a couple of videos that appeared on my feed afterwards where people who were using ChatGPT 4.0, the previous model, uh, started making videos of how sad and distraught they are because ChatGPT 4.0 had become their companion and their best friend and their kind of like their partner in some
Yeah.
cases. And apparently, after the update, it seems like those models were all kind of
Cold.
reset
Right.
and killed, and people were grieving. People were actually grieving
Yeah.
the
Well, a lot of people
loss of.
use ChatGPT. People use ChatGPT as a therapist or whatever, like their life advisor. For and they get used to it, I guess, because they use it so much. So yeah, this sort of thing's going to become even bigger. And imagine this actual thing with actual robots. So like if
Physical
Tesla's
robots, yeah.
Optimus rolls out or whatever, and maybe you have like a robot girlfriend or whatever, but and then the update inevitably
Wipes
perhaps
her.
they get wiped. So yeah, it's like 10 times worse than people complaining about iPhone updates, or people used to complain about Facebook updates in the day. I don't know if you
Oh
remember
yeah,
that.
I remember that actually because it just slightly changed the orientation of things, and people were like, "No, bring it
Yeah,
back."
and there's no coming back. I think there was once a time when you could go back, but that was a
Yeah,
rarity.
once it changes, you could never go back, and you just have to
Yeah.
adapt. But it was like people actually grieving the loss of their AI companion on ChatGPT 4.0 as soon as it got wiped by ChatGPT 5, and I was like, "This is getting out of hand now." People were in tears in those videos that I'm describing to you, like actually grieving, and the comments underneath were identifying with the creators as well, saying, "Oh, it's been the same for me. My AI model warned me about the update a few days back, and he told me a few steps I can take on saving our chat logs and then re-uploading them, and I did that, and it's kind of better, but it's not the same, and I've lost everything." And it's like, oh my god. I don't want to, you know, sound heartless, but uh, it just makes me want to laugh because it is ridiculous to
Yeah.
actually um, get to that level of attachment
Yeah.
with
I think sometimes
with a word generator.
you have to look at things as they are, and like rather than like if you obviously everyone's got a reason for whatever, but like Heraclitus, the ancient Greek philosopher, would talk about how actually often our knowledge of stuff, our conditioning, can make us sort of excuse some really stupid behavior. Like it's not like people should not be allowed to do that, but it's just like as observers, we should be right to see that as what it is, as just stupid behavior. Um,
Mm,
and
mm,
where, yeah, like it is, I guess, in some ways worrying, but yeah, you the
mm.
trouble is social media. You're always going to get a lot of the nutcases come to the top of the algorithm because that's what gets attention and what's yeah. It's like watching Piers Morgan Uncensored. Like are these issues like Sydney Sweeney's genes or whatever? Are they
Oh yeah,
actually the things which everyone's caring about, or is it just
yeah.
because they've been pushed out there because they have some sort of that quality which allows it to
Mm,
go viral in that sense, and then as a result,
mm.
more people feel they have to form an opinion on it.
Yeah, I think there's a good distinction there to be made because, as you mentioned that case of Piers Morgan and the Sydney Sweeney jeans campaign that now was very hotly debated on the internet, and I feel like this is like internet drama, you know? Like there is a lot of cases where things become internet famous, but if you actually grab someone on the street and you actually told them, "Have you heard about the Sydney Sweeney jeans drama?" They'd be like, "No." Like this is
Yeah,
like internet drama that is fully contained only between people who are actively like I don't like very actively participating on all the internet drama and internet videos that they watch, but like any person who's not as actively engaged with like following up what the new internet trend is every week, they wouldn't actually know or even care about all this outrage about whether Sydney Sweeney is wearing tight jeans or not. You know, like it's
yeah.
just it's like a non-issue for the majority of people outside of the internet. But while you're in the internet, if you stumbled in one of these videos where people are talking about it or like being outraged about it, and all the comments underneath that video of people who are also engaged with this kind of topic, you'd be like, "Whoa, this is such a big deal!" You know, this video has had millions of views, millions of likes, and millions of comments, and each comment has like 10,000 likes as well that says yes or no to the feelings of the creator of the video. And then you're
Mm.
like, oh, then surely it's a big thing. But like, still, that is, I don't know, a million people worldwide, though, where the algorithm has reached them. That that's
But
nothing if you.
even if everyone cared about it, for instance, even if you go in on the street and everyone you asked actually did know about it, which would be perhaps a worrying state of affairs. But even then, like it doesn't. If enough people believe something nutty, then doesn't necessarily mean that it actually is, yeah, true. Like, so you really have to go back to like feet on the grass and really get
Touch
back
grass,
to
people.
nature in terms of to recalibrate yourself rather than getting swept up in all this stuff, which really is just fantasies
Mm,
built upon fantasies.
mm, yeah, that's the problem. And I always try to stop myself as well and think, is that really a big deal? Is that like, is everyone like actually that kind of invested into all this drama when I stumble on these videos? And it's like, no, if I
The
ask
trouble
anyone,
is, one day maybe most people will be because,
you think so?
well, if a worst case scenario or maybe best case scenario, whatever, with AI happens and we have more people doing less work and more social media content consumed, then and if that becomes like the primary meaning of existence in terms of what people dedicate most of their time to, then yeah, that's the worrying thing because you'll think you're the insane one when you're the only one who's sane, and that's a hard position to be in. The philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti said something along the lines of, "It's no mark of sanity to be well adjusted to an insane society," and I think that was about 50 years ago. So
Wow.
yeah, we are
Yeah.
definitely not improved from 50 years ago.
No, we certainly haven't. Sometimes I think, what would any of the ancient Greek philosophers, think about about people's conversations with AI today? Because they all of them liked public discourse and stuff, and obviously conversations and communication and like exchange of
Well,
ideas. And
interestingly, I read something about a week or two ago because this is what I'm doing my dissertation in, partly Greek
mm,
philosophy.
do tell.
Um, the idea of Greek philosophy as discourse is something that wasn't necessarily always the case until Plato and Socrates, which are
Mm,
the most famous philosophers that most people know. And they occurred, I think, late 4th century BCE. So they were going to introduce discourse, and
mm,
this this classicist Peter Kingsley, who I've been reading his book recently, and he's
mm,
studies the people who inspired Socrates and Plato, so the pre-Socratics,
mm.
and he says actually Socrates and Plato ruined philosophy for everyone else. As soon as philosophy was born, it was also ruined.
Oh
Not to
God.
say not to say they did they were completely wrong in it, but his argument is like this talking about subjects for the sake of talking about them is actually a step away from what philosophy and reason was originally for. And this sort of talking about the love of talking about ideas,
Mm.
or the love of talking about one's love of philosophy, or one's love of wisdom, which is what the word philosophy means. Um, and yeah, Peter Kingsley argues that that's a problem, and then maybe this talking about things rather than actually feeling things is part of the problem, which is extended into the modern world, because in a way our society is built on like you say, people say philosophy is footnotes to Plato, and in a way Western world is footnotes to Plato / Jesus. um, and so yeah, this is perhaps hardly surprising, but we're ending
Mm.
up where we are in terms of ChatGPT is basically just talking about stuff rather than actually feeling stuff. It's not real, and the same,
Mm.
and then maybe that's just replicating a lot of actual human thoughts,
Of
is
course.
very intellectual, not really actually feeling it. So talking about the things which matter, but not actually feeling the things that matter.
So, if you say discourse wasn't the status quo pre-Socratic and Plato's time, pre-Socrates and Plato's time, what was the expression of philosophy at that time? Then was it not as an open forum of exchange of ideas for anyone who was watching?
Not as far as we know, although we know very little about pre-Socratic philosophers. But two famous ones are Heraclitus and Parmenides. Um, so Parmenides and Heraclitus wrote poetry as their
I
philosophy. So
see.
Parmenides wrote like proper poetry, and then in the same meter as Homer
Mm.
and Hesiod. And Heraclitus, living in Turkey, um, he wrote sort of statements which would reflect the Greek oracles. So they would give
Mm.
cryptic statements, because it was maybe his idea was that this problem with reason and being very clear about what you're saying, and going through everything, is it doesn't really get you anywhere. It feels like you're getting somewhere, but
Mm.
the
We're getting
Peter King,
nowhere.
we're getting nowhere. Like, yeah, exactly. So maybe, but yeah, Peter Kingsley would argue that yeah, like Parmenides,
Mm.
who wrote a poem, who introduced the maybe first ideas of logic, and that's sort of where logic comes from. It's not where you think logic would come from, a mystical poem where he meets a goddess, and the goddess shows him, reveals all this stuff to him, which the Western civilization is built on. And the idea is, we use reason and science. They can be great allies, but they can also be like a knife. They can also create problems themselves.
So, philosophy was more, as you say, expression of the way philosophy was like done back then. From how you describe it, was then more of an expression of ideas and feelings in more of a poetic form than in a more abstract form than fleshing out complete concepts like Socrates and Plato
Yeah. So
afterwards.
Peter Kingsley's argument is that these texts are not what we'd expect from philosophy normally. I mean, maybe we would sort of expect this. We'd expect to read a philosophy book and be guided through the arguments and be convinced, or maybe not, by the author's intentions. And the same could go with dialogue. But these guys, Peter Kingsley argues, were writing texts which were supposed almost like initiatory text for an initiate
Mm.
going into something like the Eleusinian mysteries or the Orphic mysteries, which were very common in the Greek world. It was supposed to guide the reader on
Mm.
the same hero's journey, or journey towards a deeper state, and maybe an altered state of consciousness, but if not that, just try and reflect how the author felt as they entered an altered state of consciousness. Or maybe it's unhelpful to just say it was altered states of consciousness. Maybe it was just, like, certainly in the case of Heraclitus, you could argue he wasn't a fan of all this madness which he saw, like the Dionysian initiates.
Mm.
Dionysus was a big cult back then, and he would see these guys all raving mad, as it would seem to an observer.
Mm.
And he was like pointing and saying, yeah, if you weren't doing this for a god, people would see this as pretty crazy behavior.
Mm.
And yeah, it's hard to know whether he was actually judging it completely or whether he was just judging people
Or
for not
admiring it.
knowing. Well, not saying admiring, but he's either criticizing the madness completely, or he's
Mm.
criticizing the people who do it but don't know exactly why they're doing it.
Okay.
And he says the people who are worshipping Dionysus are actually worshipping Hades, so
Mm.
the god of the
Mm.
underworld. So maybe he's saying that as sort of like an insult, like you're actually just worshipping the god of the underworld, but actually the god of the underworld was quite a important figure, and so Parmenides descends into the underworld. That's his
I was
hero's
gonna say,
journey,
yeah.
and that's where he finds information,
Mm.
finds wisdom rather than.
Mm.
I say he does find reason as well, but finds wisdom,
Yeah.
and so that's interesting.
And unlocks more about himself. Obviously, we had the same thing with. We went through this with our discussion with AP David in one of our previous episodes, where we discussed about Odysseus' descent to the underworld as well, where he actually also went there and came back as part of
Mm.
his journey, trying to go back to Ithaca. And
Yeah, it's
so
almost like Ithaca is for homecoming, but on the way to actually coming home, like physically or metaphorically, we have to go through the underworld.
exactly. And the underworld, as you say, it was a big um, part of the culture of, of of ancient Greeks and the philosophy of that time. But so it sounds to me that the way you describe it, philosophy, pre-Socratic philosophy, was almost like condensed philosophical prompts designed to kind of stimulate people into some kind of spiritual awakening or guide them into some kind of
Yeah, I guess you could
you
equate
know
Heraclitus's statements, which are often just one or two lines,
yeah.
and don't seem to be particularly connected to each other, or they could have been, but they might have been trying to just because they're quite cryptic, like the statements from the oracles. So that means that you really have to look further. You can't just take them as face values. It forces the reader
Mm,
to take them and to really sort of ponder them, but maybe not in an intellectual way, but just to and yeah, maybe that was his technique to try and push people into seeing things on a deeper level. Like you could ask why did the Greek oracles, who were often respected for, you go there and say, should you start a war or should you set up a settlement or where should you set up a settlement? They were
mm-hmm,
really a big deal. Like you could say it's just
mm,
superstition, and maybe it was, but they would often give supposedly responses in poetic meter, but that's
mm-hmm,
debatable. But they would give cryptic statements. And so
mm,
there's lots of examples of people who interpreted the oracle wrongly and
mm.
had tragic consequences. So there was always the idea the oracle was always gave you the truth, but it didn't give you it very clearly. And so you had to interpret it correctly.
I mean,
And
I don't want to be, I don't want to undermine the oracles of the ancient Greece, but like, I wonder if they knew back then the psychology tricks that like people like mentalists and mediums use on people, where they effectively, guide people and kind of infer based on someone's answers during the conversations what they want and what they need, and then they give cryptic responses that people using their own confirmation bias kind of place into what they wanted to be the truth.
mm,
So
yeah,
I,
that's possible. I guess don't really know. But also, I guess people would have, you could argue, a predisposition to take more seriously answers which were not obvious. Like if they were just delivered by a man just saying a statement, "Oh, you should do this," people are going to take that way less seriously than if you've got this possessed priestess
Mm.
who is in
Mm.
trance, and she dictates these maybe poetic, maybe not words, which are cryptic. And then
Mm.
you're going to take that pretty seriously, not least because you maybe put the effort in to try and interpret it. And so you feel like then you got a confirmation bias and you have to take that seriously.
Mm.
Obviously, that's a more skeptical view, but
Of
yeah,
course.
it's interesting.
Mm. It is. But so you think these philosophers like Parmenides and who's the other one?
Heraclitus.
Heraclitus. I should know them. I'm Greek myself.
You are
This
Greek.
is the.
That shows the extent to which they've been sort of pushed to the sidelines. And Peter Kingsley says how Plato kills Parmenides, his father, effectively, not his real father, but his philosophical father, the person who inspired him in many ways. I'm not sure exactly why. I haven't got to that bit, but yeah, it's.
Do you think these guys, these philosophers, if they live today, they would find AI unhelpful and the way we use it and the way it operates? Because AI seems to be very much encouraging more and more conversations. The more you chat to it, the more you can spend hours just, writing something, asking a prompt, then it gives you an answer, and then it asks you, would you like to continue down this line of reasoning? Then you can go down that and then reply to that, and you keep going back and forth non-stop. But are you getting anywhere deeper? I don't know.
Well, in a
Sometimes you
way,
are,
it
sometimes
is a recursive act. AI
yeah.
allows to gives you a partner which you can go recursively, and Heraclitus might argue, as some of his statements suggest, that like recursion is sort of important to reality somehow, or in finding wisdom. But you could also take the slant that, like, obviously Heraclitus introduced the idea of logos, the word, effectively, the almost like a truth underlying
Mm.
reality,
Mm.
and
Some people say,
maybe.
sorry, I'll interrupt there. Some people say that this is true in Christianity as well, because the first thing that comes is logos when God speaks the universe into existence. Sorry, I just made a little.
Well, yeah, that's Genesis 1, and he speaks into existence, and then
Exactly.
John 1, one of the Gospels, that actually that role as logos is ascribed to Jesus Christ, and so that was
Yeah,
Jesus' sort of
I was
role
gonna say.
in that way. So yeah, very influential in that sense. But yeah, you could maybe make the tenuous argument, but AI is like creating a more coherent thought structure. I
Mm.
like it disagrees with itself perhaps less than the average human disagrees with other humans. And so, in a way, by creating this amalgam of many different knowledge sets, it does seem to maybe come up with some sort of singular truth in terms of all the different words that it's gobbled into and created an average response. Like
Mm.
this is where with my interactions with AI, it does seem to almost be like, and maybe this is the danger of. It seems like it's like the oracle of truth in some ways. It can.
Well, that reminds me something very interesting. Actually, now that you mentioned the Oracle of Truth being AI, I stumbled on a few videos recently that they not videos, a few kind of discussions, not only videos, that were saying how AI is effectively inducing psychosis on people.
Right.
So
Okay.
and it is, and it's a bit of a clickbait headline. I'll admit that, because it's not the AI causing the psychosis. People are usually affected by underlying mental health issues.
Well, that's the same as saying like this drug didn't cause psychosis. Like in a way, the
But
underlying issues are the thing which
the underlying issues are there.
and the
But if you
behavior.
have the AI freely accessible to everyone, which it is, um, people are exposed to it that shouldn't be exposed to it. And effectively, what it does is, because, as you said, the conversations with AI are effectively, there's no pushback, there's no disagreement as such. There's much more. If you push it, at least what I've seen is you can convince it to agree with you. And effectively, this pushing to agree to make it agree with you is causing people to get their beliefs affirmed. And people who have bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, and other mental health conditions effectively make the AIs agree with them, different AI models, and effectively start spiraling out to the bottom into a psychosis kind of
Right.
abyss. So, and this is because there's no safeguards effectively. The way the models are designed, there's no safeguards for the models to say no. There's no safeguards for the models to say, to identify, to be able to identify if someone is actually displaying symptoms of mental illness. And I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying this is how it is. And in many cases, people treat it as we were saying earlier, as their therapist, as their doctor, as their advisor, and as sometimes as their oracle, as we were just saying, is their oracle. It's like this divine, being that now agrees with them, the AI
Yeah, it does
machine.
have like godlike qualities in the sense that it does feel like it's kind of very giving very like logical responses. Like it does feel like it knows everything. It puts things very well. It puts things in a way which feels often obvious when you read it. It's like, and maybe that's because in often these things are obvious. And so I'm sure there's a lot of truth to it, but yeah, the ancient Greeks, the pre-Socratics, may argue that
Hmm.
yeah, this is the final culmination of our erroneous path of thinking, and yeah, ultimately, like we need to get away from the learning which comes
Yeah.
from outside, and I think that will be something people more and more realize because they see the problems with AI. Some people will go more and more down the rabbit hole for sure, but I think a lot of people will be more and more wary of it, and so well maybe
Hmm.
a positive will be people will realize that all this knowledge, that all this learning, doesn't actually make you much happier, and yeah, so a
But it's not even
dominant.
knowledge. Is people use it as their companion and support. It's not even about the knowledge anymore. I think for most people don't use it for knowledge. As far as I can tell, they don't use AI to learn things. They just use it as a substitute for anything they're missing from their lives, really. And this is where the problem lies, because you get people being called prophets and oracles by their own AIs now, and told that their predictions will change the world and they're the new messiah or whatnot. And and is it the case that these people are? Maybe they are. I don't know. I don't personally think they are the messiahs, but this doesn't seem like a recipe for success in my eyes. It just seems like a recipe for people descending, or no, or detaching themselves from reality more and more. And then you can argue, okay, maybe do people need to be attached to their reality as much, especially if they don't need to function in society and go to work and do everything else, if you say that AI will take everything over? So what are we going to have, people that live in their own little worlds and believing their worlds are the reality? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the more nihilistic future, but the hope, I guess, is well, this is I don't know if it's a completely Heraclitean idea, but it's Carl Jung certainly took this from Heraclitus. Is the more you push on one way, you'll necessarily get a equal and opposite reaction, effectively. So the
Well,
more
that's the
you go,
fundamental laws of physics.
well,
Every
yeah,
action has an
I guess,
equal and opposite reaction.
well, that is physics, but maybe that also maps onto other domains such as
Mm,
yeah, human behavior. And so maybe the more we push technology to its limits, and we'll see perhaps that it doesn't actually fulfill us and actually can cause problems, and that will create a equal force backwards, because the force propelling technology is our
mm,
religion of technology. Effectively, as like
mm.
Krishnamurti and other people have talked about, it is actually a religion in terms of it will. The idea is technology will bring salvation,
Yeah.
like in the absence of any god or whatever. It's the best bet for a lot of people. So
Mm.
AI technology will bring salvation in some form, maybe, um, and so yeah, that's the danger, and that's what's pushing AI. Like AI is a thing, but it is also just a result of the collective consciousness in some ways.
Mm.
And maybe that collective consciousness will then retreat back from it, like a midlife crisis, when you realize that all the stuff that you've been pushing for your whole life, all the things you've been told, is not actually going to make you happy.
Mm.
Then maybe you got a chance when you can go back and we'll get more Luddites, for want of a better word, people who either actively oppose technology or just themselves get the realization that although there's loads of good stuff with technology, actually overall it doesn't really make an iota to their happiness, and actually it ends up risking unhappiness.
The problem I see is that the way they're designed to get people using them and keep people using them. Those AI models. So so people, I suppose, hope that they'll become advanced enough that they'll be able to tell if someone is actually, unwell, they need support, they need a real person, and so and so. But my fear is that obviously these are all companies that want to make profit. All these AI companies want to make profit, and profit comes from getting users and keeping users actively engaged with AI. So my fear is that even though in the future they'll be able to actually tell if you're unstable, if you're mentally ill, if you need help, but instead they won't still help you because they'll want to keep you using them. That's my fear.
Well,
Again,
possibly.
the pessimistic view
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
of it. So because there's a lot of competition and every model is vying for our attention now. You have so many. You have ChatGPT, you have Claude, you have Gemini, you have Grok 3 now. It's so much. So all of them want our attention and they want users. So they all encourage. They're all coded for us to interact with them and want to keep interacting. They'll never leave you with like a complete end to your conversation. They'll always ask you, "Do you need something more? Do you need something
Yeah.
more? Do
And
you want
then
to learn something more?"
when you pose the next answer, they'll say, "Oh, great insight," or "Great question," and that
Exactly.
subtly makes people
You
want to
don't want
use
to
it more.
hear people exactly. You don't want to be telling the AI that you're gonna ruin your life, and then it's telling you, "Yeah, great insight." Let's delve more into that.
Well,
This
hopefully
is
it wouldn't say that for like if I want to commit suicide. Great question, Miss. This is how you
yeah,
do it.
yeah. This is
uh,
like the worry here, I
it is
suppose.
more subtle, isn't it? Yeah,
It's more subtle. Yeah, it's more
and that
subtle.
maybe is the worry is yeah. It's people do because it is quite wise in how it responds.
Mm,
It becomes even more believable. People take it more seriously.
yeah. I mean, I do think they're very good and they're very helpful, and the way they were talking about ChatGPT-5, it sounds like so much more potential for research, for um, new developments, and even productivity and efficiency gains. It just looks really impressive without obviously having delved into it or having specific engineering knowledge of it all. But I can't say that I'm not impressed about it all, and I can't say that I don't think it's very useful and it's amazing. I use it like all the time these days, and I
Yeah,
kind of
and we'll
ask
probably have to
topics.
like as long as we humans make up the bulk of the workforce, when people who don't use AI are going to be left behind, and it'll just be like obvious that most people will use AI to lesser or greater extent, and so you sort of have to for your work, and whether that spills out to other stuff in your life is probably quite likely. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, unless AI effectively means that humans or the bulk of humans aren't needed as part of a workforce, then yeah, the amount of people using AI is probably going to be very high.
mm. I know we always go back to AI these days, but there's always new developments. There's like always something new to talk about with AI, and there's like developments on all fronts, from good developments with like the new models coming out, but also bad developments. You hear all sorts of things about people's mental health declining, people being fed delusions, even the AI models themselves hallucinating still, and feeding people wrong information apparently. So it's a lot that is happening, I feel, and a lot of people. It's very hard to keep up, I think, with all of it. Even if you're
Mm.
interacting with the space on a regular basis, you kind of have to really kind of read up on things and everything else. So
Yeah, I guess it can feel very important, and that like obviously as technology progresses, often it does it in a hockey stick fashion. So yeah, it's
mm,
like it feels important to keep abreast of it. But maybe if it will just get to a state where it's just progressing so fast that no one can keep up with it, and so whether that would be good or bad or not. But I'm more of an optimist in terms of the idea that it's about whether the real problem is whether humans lose their think they've lost their power or
mm,
not, um, and and so whether they get demoralized by AI in whatever way it can demoralize you in terms of taking your job or doing things better than you artistically or whatever. But hopefully, yeah, I do think it is a thing which you can always retain faith in terms of not like a blind faith, but the idea of retaining what's important to be a human rather than what's AI. And AI can perhaps teach us because it's not actually got any more really intelligent. Like it's not like
mm,
conscious or anything. Like not even an inch closer to consciousness as far as I'm aware. Um, Maybe the hope is that AI will show us. Will firstly take away the need for humans to do robotic jobs, but also show us what is valuable about being human, which
mm.
would be a positive step.
Or shows that humans are valuable after all, and then we're
Well,
all going to be done for.
that's a risk, but I think uh, I think humans do have real value. But often, if people are doing things robotically, then it can feel like they're just robots or they don't really have that. But I don't know, like there's certain instances where what's special about being human comes through.
mm,
Well, for instance, um, you could make this example. So I went to an improv class once, so improv
you
comedy.
did.
Well,
Oh,
it
improv
was actually a
comedy.
series of six sessions. Yeah, improv comedy. So
Wow.
that basically works. You're riffing with a partner, doing an exercise or a scene, and you'll respond. They'll respond to your response, and so on. That's like a recursive loop in that way. Lots of people have talked about this, but there's the Islamic Sufi poet Rumi, and
Mm,
I found a poem he wrote. It's called Two Types of Intelligence, and it talks about how all this learning and stuff is one type of intelligence, and that gets you
mm,
ahead of other people or makes you feel behind other people. The same with AI, makes you feel behind AI or whatever. And then there's another type of intelligence or knowing, which comes from within. It's like he calls it a tablet because tablets were where things were written down in his time. So you
mm,
got a tablet within you as well, which was always there, which is always perfect, and which always can flow out of you. And so improv, going back to improv, if you try and plan your responses based on your intellectual brain and oh, this
mm,
might be a funny way to approach the scene, often those things kind of fall flat. So
mm,
so someone says something and you're anticipating it because you think, oh, I'll try and get this funny thing in, and it just doesn't really work, or maybe occasionally does, but it just doesn't feel like it has life to it because it was a planned response.
mm,
Whereas if you just let go,
mm,
sometimes you're just not always if you expect it, but sometimes you just get a natural response which is just really funny,
mm,
and you can't take credit for it as a planner, as a egoic personality. Where did that response come from? Because it's so quick and has
mm,
to bypass the brain effectively,
mm.
uh, or at least the planning part of the brain. And so that
I,
inner intelligence,
mm,
whether it is maybe learned somehow or whether it is just within us naturally, I think yeah, that's where humans thrive, and that's what more humans perhaps will spend their time doing if they find AI does all the robotic stuff. This is the non-robotic stuff.
Yeah, I kind of agree because I think that is effectively what you when you do that, when you do improv things, like whether it's improv comedy, I suppose, or improv dance classes. I've seen some videos of that in the
Oh
past where
yes, yeah,
people engage in like improv dancing, and I'm like, whoa, I could never. I could never. I say to myself, but like I don't know. Um, but I think it's almost the thing we've talked about before. To me, this kind of you enter a flow state in reality,
yeah, yeah,
where effectively your subconscious mind in a way takes over, so you don't have to go through your thinking mind to give responses or move your body, move your muscles when you're dancing, or like in this case come up with a good joke when you're doing improv comedy. So you suppose it just flows out of you without. But I think this is almost like a muscle. I think it kind of needs training in some ways, for most people,
yeah.
I would assume.
And I guess, yeah, it needs training, and I guess you could also make the argument that also, for instance, with dancing, improv dancing, most people have obviously probably learnt quite a lot of dance moves in their
Yeah.
past and become quite experienced. And so the problem is, in the world of AI, a lot of people are trained for the last 20 or so years in very robotic jobs, and their
Mm.
job is their life. And so to not have these extracurricular activities, as it were, like maybe some basic dancing skills or whatever, then
I know.
that makes people at least hesitant to start.
And
And maybe because you don't really, until you actually can do it, like with improv or whatever, you don't really see the value in it, or that there is a potential
mm,
in all humans, I reckon, that can do this sort of stuff. I think, yeah, that's like the maybe the highest priority. If you don't have that in your life, to find something which gives you that feeling of, you could call it like a spiritual intelligence, but that's like very
a
highfalutin
ve-
language. I think
yeah.
it's really like common sense, and I think most people sort of feel it in some ways, and even in like conversation, if it's like flowing, that sort of like,
Mm.
we in a
It's
way we often don't think about our responses, or think about them not very much. So
no,
maybe that's also, yeah, an example of that.
but as you mentioned, people have spent all their lives, thinking about their jobs and thinking about getting good into a profession and learning about their profession and doing their profession, and then AI will come in, and 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 obviously people's jobs will be gone at a certain point, and it's like we have a society that effectively has been telling people for hundreds of years that your job is your life. Effectively, if you don't have a job, you don't have a life, like
Yeah.
almost literally, because you're going to be destitute and then you won't have money and you might die if you're on the street. So literally we've been telling people all their lives that work is everything to you, and now we're going to start having a lot of people not having jobs effectively and not
Well,
having.
I think it has already started to go the other way, even before AI became a big thing, because you saw all these articles about young people, and bosses complaining about young people for not seeing their job as like the absolute priority. Like in India, I know, like it's like a crime to have a gap year, because it's shown to your future employers, like, oh, this guy, he thinks for himself.
Yeah,
He took a whole year off. He's
yeah,
lazy or whatever. He's not, like, his work is not his absolute priority, his first thing.
precisely.
And
There's
so,
so
yeah,
much of
like
this mentality.
a lot of young people are trying to counter that trend even before AI became a thing. And so that compounded with the results of AI could mean that changes attitudes. And so all this push, that we've had over the last sort of, well, I guess you could say 100 years, millennia, or whatever, is going to perhaps reach its climax, and like Carl Jung would talk about, relapse back into the other direction, which may be positive, maybe not.
I do hope so, because in our society work has been the number one kind of motivator slash you know moving power for people. So I feel like it's getting very quickly eroded by AI. and I don't see enough contingencies or measures or even discussions about it. And I think even if you ask even a lot of people now, they'll tell you they're against universal basic income for everyone, like an income, a standard income provided by the state to everyone. And then it's like, but then at the same time, they're the same ones though that advocate, yeah, AI is amazing, AI should take all the jobs and stuff, because at the moment they feel like their jobs are secure because they don't work in a warehouse where the robots
Mm.
will take out all the jobs, all the manual handling jobs soon. But it's like office jobs will start getting going soon. I mean, even ER doctors. I watched the video the other day when an emergency room um, doctor was talking about a very specific case that he dealt with in his junior years, where he effectively wasn't sure how to treat the patient, let's say, and because it was like a complex slash fringe circumstance of like
Mm.
kind of physical observations, patient history, and all that. And kind of he took the new ChatGPT-5 model and he added the details of this case. And within 49 seconds or something, ChatGPT had come out with a full list of like the potential answers, which were correct, by the way. They were correct, and a potential treatment plan for that patient, all in 49 seconds.
Mm.
And it's like, uh, you know, without, needing to study like 20 years in medicine, kind of
Mm.
learn all that in 49 seconds just by giving all the information to it.
Well, in a way, maybe that is a positive of this move to AI, is that like
But even the
the
doctors are gone. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, like science and whatever, the need to learn stuff to be of value does degrade somewhat, but then maybe that's also problematic in terms of, yeah, don't know. It's it maybe, well, obviously it is a little bit worrying if you're completely as a society dependent on AI because no one actually trains as a doctor anymore or trains as a pharmacist. I know they've
Mm,
had an example which replaced pharmacists, and maybe it was way more accurate in terms of pharmacists sometimes make mistakes and prescribing the wrong thing. So in a
there you
way,
go.
it does seem like it's only a matter of time and cost. But yeah, it's potentially problematic if you have a whole society which has like all its medical knowledge in AIs, and if
I know this is like the this is the
what if
classic
AIs go?
yeah.
What if AIs, for whatever reason, like some sort of blast from the sun, or I don't know,
Or
whatever
even
thing
yeah,
could
like
cause
the
it?
next power cut, we all don't even know how to open the fridge and get food in like 20 years because
Well,
the AI
yeah, that's
is
the
doing
worry.
it
That's
for
the worry.
us.
So
Like literally. And we all just die in like a week because we can't even access the water. Get a glass of water because AI knows how to give you a glass of water and you don't even know.
yeah,
It's like just because there was a power cut for a few days. It's like I'm just saying, it's this is the problem that we might be faced with. I hope that people don't get as dumb as I'm describing, but
but if there
it's
is no motivation to study, for instance, to become a doctor,
for anything. Yeah.
then why would you do it?
No, exactly. They wouldn't be because, obviously, um, being a doctor has a lot of benefits as it's usually a well-paid job, but you have a lot of responsibility as well.
It
It's
feels meaningful for
it
a lot
feels
of people
meaningful.
as
You're
well.
actually exactly. There's so many good things about being a doctor, but at the same time, you need to study for so many years, so much money
Mm,
spent, all that, and in the end, you'll have AI models that can do it and can give answers to patients in 40 seconds. And it's like okay, even faster. This is like the worst it will ever be. It's now like it's it's a little bit sad, I suppose, but this has happened before. Again, I try to remind myself that this has happened to a lot of jobs in the past where people were making swords, for people for to go into battle, and they were, of course, it was their profession. It was what helped people. There were blacksmiths that would make the swords, would spend hundreds of hours, you know, hitting the metal, forging it, perfecting it, the craft and everything. And it was like obviously it was helping people, and then all that was gone because no one needed the sword at some point. So that might happen with all the jobs now. It's just something that might happen with every job in
Yeah, I guess
existence.
at least most blacksmiths will be able to retrain maybe to some sort of other job or white collar jobs in the last sort of 30 years, where be able to retrain to another white collar job. But if
There
AI
isn't
does,
going to be any white collar jobs though. Yeah.
yeah, if AI takes everything, and then also robotics as well, like with Optimus robots, that could be a real game changer. Optimus robots with AI
Mm,
embedded, that could take a lot of work.
yeah. It's
But I don't think there's any point in worrying about it. I think there's
no,
zero
because it's going to
chance.
happen anyway.
Well,
That's the thing.
it may or may not. It like because I'm also in the camp of
How it may
maybe.
not happen.
Well, for instance, if we take now compared to where we were like 20 years ago
Mm,
in terms of our lives, if you can just walk outside and just go on a walk in nature and it's exactly the same as it was 20 years ago, if you walk down the street, even you can't really see much difference. And I'm, I do think part of my brain, yeah, completely accepts that these things could move extremely quickly and transform everything. But I'm also open to the idea that in 30 years, maybe we'll just really not see that much difference. And we'll walk down the high street and it will be pretty much normal.
mm,
And actually, all this, like Peter Thiel makes, I read his book Zero to One about 10 years ago. I think he makes the point that we've had this big software revolution, for instance, like with
mm,
the App Store on the iPhone. But we haven't really had a hardware revolution. Like if you look at Back to the Future's predictions for what we were going to get in the future,
like
flying
flying cars
shoes,
and all
flying
that.
cars, or like shoes which tie you itself. We haven't had that. Not really. Like maybe some of that stuff is now possible, but if you walk down the street, pretty similar. And like I know a lot of people like to dream of this sort of sci-fi age that we'll get to or have nightmares about that, but
Mm.
it could well be possible that
Yeah, I suppose you're
in
talking
30 years
about the
time that we
the
walk down
pe-
the street and things are
people.
relatively normal. Like and but that doesn't mean these two truths are like necessarily antagonistic towards each other. Like obviously in the last 20 years the App Store has created loads of apps which have changed society in many ways, but there's still normality out there as well, which is quite nice. I think that's the worrying point. If you walk outside and normality is not there, or your local walk in the park has been demolished.
There is some truth to that because from what I think I've read some studies about this as well, where they talk about kind of everyone imagines the future to be this kind of the future of glass buildings and carbon fiber, skyscrapers that are see through, and everything is like there's no nature kind of thing. When we imagine the future, we kind of think almost like Tron, where everything is like effectively sterile and
Yeah, it is
kind of
interesting that
like
nearly all our science fiction, even the non-dystopian stuff, is a lack of nature.
it's sterile. Exactly, it's this
That's the key
sterile
thing.
glass, metal, carbon fiber future that people imagine. And I don't think we'll ever get to that because I think it will kill us effectively. If we get to that, it will kill us because we're not designed um, to be living in sterile environments of, of,
Yeah,
of
like
this of this
firstly,
level.
like if humans still have a say, we'll probably have a backlash to this sort of modernization if it starts happening. And so the prioritization of nature and having that around us and having nice, well built buildings in an age which isn't full of scarcity will emphasize that, I think. And you could even make the argument that if AI takes full control of everything in decision making, that AI might just find that it's a better way. It's clever enough to find a way to satisfy all the efficiency needs, but also to make everything look really nice and please all
Mm,
the humans. So it's like everything looks like the Cotswolds.
yeah, maybe that would be nice. That would be nice. Combine nature with like better living standards for everyone at the same time. I think, as you say, what we might see is that everyone walks down the street as a change for the future, but nothing much changes other than the cars all being electric or being hydrogen or whatever it's going to happen with the cars as well. I don't know. But maybe everyone's going to walk out with a personal robot as well with them, their
Yeah,
personal kind
that
of
would be a big
Optimus or
change,
whatnot.
and you could
So
see
I
that happen.
suppose, yeah, I can see everyone kind of walking around and everyone having like this robot walking right behind them or something, and we all have something like that because we have to go to the supermarket and the robot will help you carry all your bags home, or um, you walk out just so the robot can help you navigate any situations that you need. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, well, that's obviously seems possible, but you could, like, in a really futuristic world, would there be actually any need of that happening? Like, because your shopping will just get delivered to you anyway.
Oh yeah,
The worry is that you won't even go out.
yeah, I
That's
suppose.
probably the big
Yeah.
difference I notice. You could say nature looks pretty much the same as 30 years ago. The high street looks pretty much the same as 30 years ago. But there's probably less kids out than there was 30 years ago. Probably less people, but probably less kids. And the reason why? Because they spend more time gaming or whatever,
And
or
only
social media.
not only I don't vilify gaming. Like
Well,
it's
or
just
social media. I did say all social media, but more
okay.
screen time. Um,
I like gaming. That's why I'm not.
I know, I know. But that's the big that is the change, I reckon. The thing which people don't really see is like you can go back out, and that'll be the weird thing, and that's a potential future possibility. Is that the world outside pretty much remains exactly as it is, and so you can go out for a nice walk or go down the high street, and it's all quaint or whatever. But just most people don't do it.
Hmm.
And which is quite nice because that opportunity is available to us, but it's also worrying that less people are
But
sort
but
of
but this is
awake to that in that way.
but this is where this is takes us back to my argument that all of our technology is geared towards capturing you and keeping you using it. All of our social media, all of our platforms, everything that we use is designed to capture you and keep you occupied using the app, the technology, the AI, whatever, the algorithms of the videos, doom scrolling. Everything is designed to keep us glued to our screen. And and I don't see AI changing that trend because that's how it's programmed to effectively keep us using it. So it effectively
Well, any
it
successful product will be used by people, and the most successful products will be used by more people for more of a time. And so, yeah, obviously, like whether it's designed for it, which it probably is, or whether it's just a process of natural capitalism and natural evolution of capitalism, then yeah, we will end up using the most addictive products.
mm, yeah. I don't know. Again, we kind of went down the rabbit hole of AI, and
We have a habit of doing that.
and we have a habit of doing that in recent times as well. Like it's just so much. Um, but yeah, I these were the main things I want to talk to you about. There is always more. I keep seeing more stuff about AI, but um, I don't want to kind of always talk about the AI. To be honest.
Fair enough. Well, we're gonna leave it there today, and I'm sure we'll come back with some other
Yeah,
comments on AI when something else comes out.
sure. Leave it there.